At the wedding ceremony, I want you to give a speech in French. I doubt someone who only ever had part-time jobs since dropping out of school can pull it off, though.
Dorothy, who always mocks my educational background and job, threw this unreasonable request at me. I can't let myself be laughed at like this. I'll give a fantastic speech to celebrate the marriage and show Dorothy what I'm made of. I'm Margaret, 32 years old, mainly handling customer service in a restaurant. I've been working here for about 15 years. Starting shortly after I dropped out of high school, I used to be a student at a local private high school. But in my sophomore year, Dad's business took a turn for the worse, making it tough to afford my tuition. My brother Kendrick, already a college graduate and working, didn't have this problem. But for my parents, managing daily expenses along with my high school tuition and other fees was too much. I knew I wasn't as bright as Kendrick. Continuing in an expensive high school didn't seem right for me or my family, so I chose to drop out. I convinced my family that there were other paths, like equivalency exams or correspondence schools, if needed. Dropping out was my decision, and afterward I focused on part-time jobs to help with the finances. Fortunately, the business gradually recovered, and by my mid-20s it was doing better than before. I don't regret my choice to leave school. It was a tough call, but it gave me unique experiences. One day after work, Kendrick called me.
Hey, long time no see. How are you doing?
Kendrick, unlike me, was always good at studies. For further research, he went to Harvard. He was so engrossed in his studies that he rarely talked to people, which sometimes felt like a flaw. While I occasionally became his conversation partner, we hadn't spoken in a while, so I was happy to hear from him.
Actually, I'm seeing someone now.
Hearing this, I could sense Kendrick's happiness over the phone.
Great. Of course, I'll introduce her properly to the family and relatives, but I wanted you to meet her first.
To that, Kendrick replied a bit shyly.
Actually, it's my first time dating someone and introducing them to the family, so I'm a bit nervous. I wanted to have a sort of rehearsal first.
Kendrick has always been a go-getter when it comes to studies and work, often relied upon by many, but his love life was a different story. Even I, as his family, am hearing about his romantic endeavors for the first time. But now that I think about it, Kendrick is almost 40, so it's not surprising that he has a girlfriend with marriage in mind.
I've already told her about you, and she's eager to meet. How about next Sunday?
On the day we agreed upon, I was at the cafe where we were supposed to meet. Today I'm meeting Kendrick and his girlfriend, or rather his fiancée since they're considering marriage. I was surprised to see the woman Kendrick brought with him when they arrived 5 minutes early. She was stunningly beautiful, not at all what I expected from Kendrick, who had never dated before. With her perfectly manicured nails, stylish pumps that accentuated the shape of her feet, and an elegant dress that spoke of taste, she was the epitome of urban chic from head to toe.
Pleased to meet you. I've heard about you. I'm glad we could meet today.
I had hoped we'd get along, but it seemed I was the only one who thought so.
Oh, thank you. It must seem impressive to someone who's only done part-time jobs.
Her way of talking felt condescending, as if she was looking down on me for my education and job.
You dropped out of high school, didn't you? Everyone has their reasons, but I couldn't imagine keeping up with someone who couldn't even graduate. You work in a restaurant or pub, right? I guess you don't need much education or brains to take orders from customers.
True. I didn't complete high school, but I have no regrets and take pride in my work. Her comments were bordering on rude, and I was tempted to retort multiple times. However, a few snide remarks weren't a good enough reason to spoil the mood. More than anything, Kendrick seemed happy, completely oblivious to her snide comments.
Dorothy can be strong-willed, but that's also what makes her cute.
In Kendrick's eyes, she must seem like a strong but intelligent and beautiful woman. I might have reconsidered a relationship with someone as two-faced and judgmental about others' education as Dorothy. But Kendrick is the one dating her, and if he's happy, I decided not to worry about it. That day, we exchanged contact information, but parting ways with them left me exhausted.
A few weeks later, Dorothy contacted me personally. After that, Kendrick and I filed our marriage certificate and are now officially husband and wife. I'm contacting you because I need advice about our wedding party. We're planning to have a ceremony in Paris in 2 months, and I'd like to serve a dish from the bride. I'd appreciate any good ideas you might have.
The attached photo showed her and Kendrick with their marriage certificate. The thought of that condescending woman becoming my sister-in-law was complicated. However, I decided not to let personal feelings interfere. My role was to help make their wedding wonderful by brainstorming ideas for the dish. So immediately replied to Dorothy, but then communication from Dorothy ceased. I assumed she had chosen something from my earlier suggestions. I had already received an invitation to the wedding party from Kendrick. As attending the overseas wedding meant I couldn't work at the shop for a while, I decided to work as much as possible in the US, as a form of apology. I saved up for the trip smoothly and was preparing for the Paris trip when, 2 weeks before the wedding, I suddenly received a message from Dorothy.
I don't think the recipe you thought of is suitable for our guests. Can you rethink it?
Rethink a recipe and create prototypes with just 2 weeks to go. And above all, without knowing what Dorothy wants or what level she expects, how could I propose something suitable?
My vision? Isn't that your job to figure out? My cooking frequency is none of your business. I'm busy with work, unlike you, so just handle it.
Both of us were busy with work, and I thought it was essential to align our visions, but Dorothy didn't see it that way. Despite my busy schedule, I kept proposing recipes, but everything was rejected.
Such a tasteless design. It's just like you. We are the stars of the ceremony, not the food. I don't have time to make something so elaborate.
My suggestions were repeatedly rejected, and the cycle of revising and late-night messages continued. I was reaching the peak of exhaustion and sleep deprivation. However, Dorothy didn't seem to feel the slightest bit sorry for me. On the contrary, she acted as if it was only natural for me to keep proposing recipes, pushing me day and night.
You're just working a part-time job, right? Can't you listen to a simple request from your sister-in-law?
I tried my best to accommodate Dorothy's wishes and wanted to contribute to making Kendrick's wedding special, but I have my own life and job. It's honestly difficult to dedicate all my time to creating recipes for Dorothy, despite explaining this repeatedly, but she wouldn't listen.
Your job is simple, something anyone can do. Don't compare yourself to me. I work at a company during the day and have a pile of tasks. Unlike you, I can't just take time off whenever I want.
Being spoken to like this, I couldn't find it in my heart to continue wanting to create recipes for Dorothy. I was only doing this for Kendrick's once-in-a-lifetime event, and because I don't like to abandon tasks halfway through, not out of any genuine desire to help Dorothy. Dorothy finally approved a recipe 4 days before the wedding, in the early hours of the morning. It took a lot of time to express the indescribable inspiration she wanted, but I think the result was satisfactory. I sent the data in a hurry and called Dorothy.
This one's the best of the lot. It's fine. What nerve do you have to keep me up until dawn? It was Dorothy's demand to finish everything by this morning that led to our late-night exchange.
Despite staying up all night to meet her schedule, I couldn't understand why I was being scolded.
What's that? You're blaming me? You, with your flexible schedule, should be accommodating me, a full-time employee. This is why I can't stand dropouts and part-time workers without common sense.
I wasn't asking for gratitude, but it was Dorothy who demanded a satisfactory recipe on an impossible schedule. I took on this task with her best interests in mind, and I don't deserve to be treated this way. However, telling Kendrick about Dorothy's behavior and potentially complicating our future relationship seemed too troublesome, so I chose to say nothing. The long-awaited day of Kendrick's wedding ceremony had finally arrived. Mom had passed away, and Dad couldn't leave America due to Grandpa's care, so they were unable to attend. At the venue, not only staff and interpreters were present, but also friends of Kendrick and Dorothy, and people who seemed to be Dorothy's family were already seated. I was looking forward to finding my seat, but a disheartening incident clouded my excitement. My name wasn't printed on the guest list, and there was no seat prepared for me. After explaining the situation to a nearby staff member and showing my invitation, they quickly arranged a seat for me, but I was far from satisfied. As I sat in the hastily arranged seat and watched the ceremony, suddenly a spotlight shone on me. I was bewildered and couldn't comprehend the situation until Dorothy, with a microphone in hand, addressed me.
Since you're here, why don't you give a speech? Share our happiness with the Parisians and bless our marriage. So please give your speech in French.
I was caught off guard, unprepared for a French speech.
Since you're here, why don't you give a speech? Share our happiness with the Parisians and Parisiennes and bless our marriage.
Dorothy, who had turned off the microphone, whispered in my ear.
I doubt someone who's only done part-time jobs since dropping out of school could possibly give a speech in French. You'll probably just embarrass yourself in front of nearly 100 guests.
Hearing this, I realized Dorothy wanted me to fumble in French in front of everyone, expecting me to be ridiculed. Understanding her intent, I decided to give it my all in the speech, making her regret ever asking me to speak in French. I took the microphone from Dorothy and started my speech in French. I began with words of blessing for the marriage of Mr. and Mrs. Kendrick, then recounted the disrespectful things said to me when we first met. The incessant calls night and day for the wedding consultation, and the mocking comments about my part-time job and educational background. Mixing in jokes, I kept the speech entertaining. Kendrick and Dorothy, sitting in the front row, whispered to each other as they listened.
When did she learn to speak French? And I had no idea about all that stuff with you, Dorothy. Unbelievable.
What stuff? Well, I'm just getting along with my cute sister-in-law.
Hey Dorothy, are you serious?
I'm not one to let things slide without making the most of them, so I turned the rude remarks and unbelievable actions of Dorothy into humor for my speech. Kendrick, who had long been unaware of Dorothy's disdainful behavior towards me, looked incredulous. Meanwhile, Dorothy smiled pleasantly, as if nothing was amiss throughout the entire event. Naturally, she doesn't understand a word of French, relying on interpreters for even simple conversations. It was truly comical to see her, clueless about what was being said, merely smiling politely among guests who either understood French or used mobile translation apps. Had a wedding speech ever stirred up such excitement before? As I finished, Kendrick seemed to be confirming something with Dorothy, who abruptly approached me.
I just heard from Kendrick. Don't you know there's a line you shouldn't cross in a speech? Are you trying to ruin my wedding?
You're the one who asked for a speech in French. And as for knowing what she said, I'm not sure I can explain it to you. Should and shouldn't be said. I think that applies to you as well.
How can a dropout like you speak French? Dropouts can't give speeches in French.
While it's true that I dropped out, it's incorrect to assume that dropouts can't speak French. I studied to become fluent. I had been studying French for work purposes, never imagining it would come in handy in such a scenario.
Are you trying to destroy my fateful encounter and ruin my wedding with your French speech?
Dorothy, clearly annoyed by my question, turned red and started trembling.
Stephen, remember?
Dorothy, apparently not expecting my response, began muttering resentfully. Stephen and I were about to get serious, but after he talked to you at the pub that day, he lost confidence in his feelings for me.
You said something about enjoying the effort to live with someone you love.
Dorothy glared at me with a look of immense spite.
If things had gone differently, Stephen might have proposed to me on my birthday.
Kendrick, who had overheard our conversation, seemed to realize Dorothy's true feelings.
So you're not actually in love with me, but still hung up on your ex. Am I just second best?
Second best? Don't make me laugh. I was supposed to marry a handsome, well-educated, high-earning man. You have education and money. That's it. It's a compromise.
Kendrick finally understood that the woman he'd fallen in love with was only interested in his education and income. A self-centered marriage born out of compromise.
Was all your talk about loving me for who I am just Kendrick? A lie?
You believe that? Isn't it enough that I like your education and income? What's the problem?
Kendrick had never imagined he would hear such an unexpected confession from Dorothy. He had always said he wanted to marry someone he truly loved. Not rushing into marriage.
I can't believe the situation either. I wish it were just a bad dream.
The despair Kendrick felt upon discovering that the woman he finally loved had only approached him for his money and education was immeasurable. As I was lost in these thoughts, I heard shouting. Looking around, I saw Kendrick's childhood friend on a mobile phone. It turned out to be a video call from Dad, who couldn't leave America, but wanted to see Kendrick's wedding in real time. He had been connected to the entire ceremony, including the recent commotion. And Dad's furious voice was now audible through the phone.
Dad, is that you? You saw everything?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh no, this is scary. Was I being filmed the whole time? Are you saying this is all my fault?
Dad had previously called me to express his joy that Kendrick was dating a woman who was polite and genuinely wonderful. So, it's no surprise he was furious to see such an embarrassing unraveling of events at the wedding.
I feel bad for Dad. He even paid for this wedding and was so happy for us.
Finally, Dad advised Kendrick to think carefully about what to do next and then ended the video call. The wedding, marred by Dorothy's confession and Dad's video call, ended awkwardly, resembling a wake more than a celebration. Watching the guests leave hastily with forced smiles, I wondered if this was really for the best. But it was up to Kendrick to decide what to do next after seeing Dorothy's true colors. The trouble between them escalated after they returned to America. Kendrick, betrayed in an unexpected way, wanted a divorce, wishing he had married someone he genuinely loved and who reciprocated his feelings. Dorothy, seeing Kendrick as her ticket to a wealthy lifestyle, refused to let go.
You think we can just divorce after getting married? I've just left my job for this marriage, and now I'll have a divorce record. Unacceptable.
You didn't marry me because you loved me, right? Why not go back to your ex then? I'm not your wallet.
Dorothy, humiliated at the wedding and facing the prospect of being a divorcee, demanded compensation for her mental anguish and the unilateral divorce initiated by Kendrick.
I wasted my best years on this. You need to make up for my mental anguish.
Make up for your anguish? Maybe it's time you reflected on your own actions. I've had your background thoroughly investigated.
This was exactly what it meant to dig one's own grave. Dorothy's outcry for alimony led to the revelation that she had been meeting her ex-boyfriend even after getting married. More of Dorothy's misdeeds came to light, including using money saved for the family to meet her ex. Consequently, she ended up being the one who had to compensate Kendrick.
It's all lies. I was tricked, and I don't want a divorce.
You don't want a divorce because it's my income you're after, right? It's clear you only wanted the status of being married, Kendrick retorted.
Dorothy, having no choice, agreed to the divorce, but her downfall was pitiable. She had already quit her job, announcing her marriage plans, and now, with no savings left after supporting her ex, she struggled to make ends meet. She is working day and night, regardless of the time, to pay off the compensation demanded by Kendrick. Furthermore, someone had uploaded the wedding fiasco to a video sharing site, making Dorothy infamously known as the bride who ruined her own wedding. One day I saw a completely changed Dorothy on the street. She was wearing the same bag and clothes as when we first met, but the sparkle was gone. Her skin was damaged, her body thin, and deep wrinkles contradicted her former beauty. She noticed me and approached in a frenzy.
It's all your fault. Everything's ruined because of you. If things had stayed the same, I'd be living comfortably now. You owe me for ruining everything.
Heading to a meeting, I hadn't expected to be accosted on the street by Dorothy. Seeing no end to this confrontation, I decided to leave quickly. Fortunately, my boyfriend was waiting at the meeting place. Dorothy, intimidated by his large stature, fled immediately. I'm currently dating a French man whom I met at the pub where I work part-time. We got close over shared interests and eventually started dating after confirming our feelings. I owe my ability to respond to that sudden French speech to him. My boyfriend and I eventually tied the knot. We filed our marriage certificate and became husband and wife, not basing our decision on titles or backgrounds, but on deep mutual understanding and discussion. We currently live in America due to our work, but I continue studying French in case we move to France in the future. Despite everything that happened, I'm happy to be living with someone I truly love. Being honest with my feelings and sharing love in this relationship is the greatest joy.